I'd like to talk to you about the materials of a literacy kit. Okay, now it's important to know that this kit is both digital and print. Okay, and so what we're trying to do is make it available for everybody. And so by making it digital, it is online and accessible and easily given to anybody who wants it at any time. For the actual print materials, we'll talk about that in a little bit of how to best manage those, but first let me show them to you. In the last video I showed you about SUN, Symbolic Universal Notation, and that is a first booklet that we give to learners. So they come in, they are assessed at a very low level, and these students are at level 1. They have almost no language whatsoever that shows literacy. And they can speak the language, but they don't necessarily have the language in visual form. So we give them the SUN booklet and we say, learn this, study the symbols, and they go home and they learn those symbols and they spend 2 weeks doing that. And when they come back, whoever's facilitating the program, is they look at it and they check and they see, did they actually, 1, read it, 2, can they show a demonstration of the skills from that book? If they can, then we say move on to book number 2. And book number 2 is a working vocabulary, okay, which is right here. And right now we have it labeled for simplicity, but it's first book. There are 4 of these books, A, B, C, and D, okay, and they're color-coded, okay, but all it is a picture inside, and that picture is important for now and for later, but it is also got vocabulary. Where did that vocabulary come from? Well, it came from the SUN vocabulary booklet. But now they don't have the symbols any longer. What happens is the brain starts to store these symbols and they can retain them for a number of weeks. Okay, and if you're using it, they'll retain them forever. Okay, but that's not our goal. Our goal is the target language. So what we're doing is coupling things together. And the brain gets SUN, and then they take new words in as SUN vocabulary. What happens is the brain divides them and starts to keep them. It doesn't keep them synonymous. It doesn't mean that the new word run has to be with the symbol. Okay, it means they're acquiring the word run and they're acquiring the symbol. Well, now we're separating it out and we're saying leave the SUN symbol behind and now just look at the vocabulary, but now attach it to a picture. What we're doing is we're actually using something called scaffolding in education. Layer 1, overlap. Layer 2, overlap. Layer 3, and we're building skills based on prior acquisition of language. So they spend 4 books on SUN. They do 2 weeks each. They're going to go crazy going through vocabulary. They can look at these, play with these, draw pictures of these, point to things in here, but they're going to come back at some time and they're going to say, I finished this book. And as they finish this book, the facilitator looks, they get a tracking sheet, they find their name, and they say book A in vocabulary, and they check it off, and then they ask comprehension questions. Show me the word faces, and then they have to find the word faces. Show me the word man. Show me the word earring. And they have to find these different things in the picture and actually demonstrate that. All the pictures match to that, but it's an easy way to do a comprehension check. These are the vocabulary books. After the vocabulary books, then they jump into the next set of books, which are the next normal path of language, which is fragments. Okay, fragments are pieces to a sentence. Okay, so this time it has pictures, very much the same, very similar. It has words built off the same. It has a little bit more. Man touches. Okay, it's not a full sentence. Man touches what? In this, the man touches the giraffe. But the fragment man touches begins to move from vocabulary of single word use to vocabulary of fragment use. We're building off the platform of language, and we're doing that very quickly in a number of weeks. So they spend some weeks doing this and going through these books, and then they come back and they give them back, and you get a tracking sheet and you check off what you're doing, and then they go into their sentence books. And the sentence books, guess what? Look exactly the same. And the sentences read something like this. The soldiers are on top of the walls. Okay, and they are comprehending these sentences. They go from easy to medium to hard. And by the time they're done, they have difficult sentences that they're actually reading. This is somewhere between 8 and 12 weeks, depending on the individual learner and how they can move through the system. Okay, but just think about that for a second. In 8 to 12 weeks, reading sentences from nothing is phenomenal. Remember, in the first video, I said, what does 5 years of language look like? What does 2.5 years look like? What does 1 year look like? What does half a year look like? 1 month look like? Almost nothing. Okay, and so we are actually making great ground. And then, if they can get to those sentences, then they go into the next material, which is a storybook. And guess what? Same pictures, much bigger, but they have paragraphs underneath. And they're reading Bible stories now. Okay, what's incredible is that they're actually grasping the comprehension of true Bible stories in reduced form, and they're reading paragraphs for them to get to them. And honestly, they're so happy at this point because they're getting away from these fragments and sentences and vocabulary words that they're just ready to go and say, finally, I can get into some other reading materials. After that, now this is a work in progress, we want to do a children's Bible, which means it's an easier read Bible. After that, and because if they go from easy read stories to easy read Bible, we're hitting the same level of audience that's out there and the same comprehension level. We have about half of that Bible done, and so we have several books of that available, and we're going to make it available on the website as well for materials, but then we're going to have a full Bible, and then we're going to have comprehension questions that go with it. So then we've moved into something a little bit more challenging. I want you to see this right here. These are 9 different books. These 9 different books basically are devotions, and you have levels 1 through 9. They're actually leveled. What we did is we took our Daily Bread devotionals and we simplified them. We made them easy to read. Okay, and so then when they go through here, they can read these and start doing the same thing that they're doing in the children's Bible, except we're removing the pictures. They're just now into paragraphs. And as we go through the levels and we get to level 9, it actually starts to become much more challenging in here. Okay, and then they give these back. And when they give them back, guess what the facilitator gets to do? They get to ask questions and say, what did you read? They get to open up a devotional and say, read it in front of me. And then they get to ask some questions for that, showing comprehension for that. After these, we encourage them to go immediately into a full Bible. Okay, and that Bible will give them the ability to read through chapters. We're going to have questions for every chapter of the Bible as well. And then we hope we can take them into something called Our Daily Bread University, which is an odbu.com, and take a full course in there. And we're looking at spiritual basics. And if they can take that course and answer those questions, they've shown that in 1 year, they can go from just learning Son, spend 2 weeks, learning vocabulary, spend up to 8 weeks, learning fragments, spend up to 8 weeks, learning sentences, spend up to 8 weeks. Okay, that's at 26 weeks now. And then they can go into a children's Bible, spend a few weeks, get into week 30, and then they can go into these devotionals for the next several weeks. And then by week 45, they start reading the Bible, and then by the end of the year, they actually begin to take an Our Daily Bread University course. I believe it's possible. We have several groups around the world participating right now. If anything, what we need to do is expand material, but I'll talk about that in another video as well, and say how do we supplement more materials so that we don't lose interest of readers, which is a big deal in reading theory, is holding the motivation and the ownership inside the learner to be motivated to go forward on their own. Okay. We'll talk about that in the next video, and then the video after that. I mentioned a facilitator, and I'm going to talk specifically about the facilitator and how to track and what that looks like.